These are 3 of the cheapest and most recommended entry-level flight sim devices available today. The Logitech G Extreme 3D Pro, the Thrustmaster TFlight HOTAS X and HOTAS 4, but more on that later, and the Thrustmaster T16000M FCS HOTAS. And what I want to know is, are they good enough to conquer the infamously difficult DCS World?
God damn it, so if anyone owns this HOTAS and you can air-to-air refuel, you are officially a god. Don't like it, we don't like it, we don't like it. Rifle? This is a lot of work, man.
In 4 rounds of testing, we will find out if these devices have what it takes by testing their comfortability for flying a helicopter,
Okay, not terrible.
precision for air-to-air refueling, button placement for efficient air-to-ground weapons delivery, and their usability in a dogfight against the highest difficulty Su-27 Ace AI.
There we go.
And of course, this wouldn't be a TUVOS video without a comparison against my weapon of choice, the standard Xbox controller. Now let's see what these flight sim devices are really made of. First up is the helicopter flying test. For this, we are using the free OH-6A Loach mod simply because of how difficult it is to fly. If you can fly this, then any other helicopter is child's play. Here we can see what can be done with my Xbox controller, so let's compare that with the first device, the Logitech G Extreme 3D Pro for $35 US. Also, I think first impressions are extremely valuable, so what you're about to see are my Twitch live stream first impressions of each device.
Ooh, here we go. Here we go, here we go. See if we can get into a hover. Need left pedal. Okay, not terrible. Not terrible. We are now in a hover. First time doing this, by the way, with this flight stick. Not the most stable hover of all time, but serviceable. I'm pretty sure that's just me not being used to it. Let's not drift backwards into some tank canisters behind us. So far, not bad.
As you saw there, for being such a cheap device, the Logitech G Extreme 3D Pro performed rather well. Now let's see our first time hovering with the Thrustmaster TFlight HOTAS X.
This is gonna be a mess. Okay, so at least the throttle is nice and smooth, like at least that has a lot of resolution. The stick, however, doesn't appear to have a lot of resolution, and neither does the twist of the stick. Okay, well, whatever, let's see what we can do. Let's try to get into a hover. Oh boy, let's find that sweet spot. Oh jeez. Oh jeez. Okay, I'm nice and stable on my heading, however my cyclic left, right, up, forward, back is not great. I can't find the sweet spot where I can just hold the hover. I'm constantly battling it, which is not ideal. See how much that freaking diamond is jumping around? On the top left corner, that red diamond is my controls position. What is with the sensors in this thing, man? Some would say that's good enough for a hover because I'm able to stay within the pad, more or less, but this is not nearly as smooth as I'd like it to be.
Overall, not great. Thrustmaster's TFlight HOTAS X is just too imprecise in its sensors for a stable hover, but at $65 US, maybe that's expected. So let's see what $170 US will get us in the Thrustmaster T16000M HOTAS.
Because CAC is a very funny word. Okay, let's go ahead and take off. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I can see why people complain about a twist axis. The springs in this stick are very strong. I wouldn't want to hold a hover here for more than 2 minutes because this is just a bit too uncomfortable. So in this instance, I can see why people would prefer using the paddles on the front of the collective to control pedals. Oh my god, my hand is already getting tired. So this is a decent enough hover, I would say.
The T16000M has excellent sensors in it for all axes. However, the recentering springs in the stick are a bit too strong in my opinion, but maybe that's just me and my personal preference. So next up is the helicopter testing for quick stopping from a high speed. This will test the device's ability to coordinate all three sets of controls, cyclic, collective, and pedal, in order to go safely from forward flight to a hover very quickly.
So in addition to being a quick stop test, this portion of this Helo test with these devices is also kind of doubling up as a forward flight test. And honestly, the Logitech G Extreme 3D Pro, it's handling this really well. It's flying nice and smooth. Surprisingly so. Alright, we're coming up to the quick stop point. It's going to be this beige building here with the pylons in the middle of it, or whatever the hell you want to call those. Here it is, and quick stop. Ooh, Jesus. We're fine. Just add a little bit of flair there. We meant to do that. We totally meant to do that. Oh, that's funny. Now that I will say, that is something I would not have been able to recover from using a normal gamepad. That was kind of intense. And now we're just like that, we're back in a hover.
In spite of that crazy move there, the Logitech G Extreme 3D Pro is still able to keep up just fine. It has honestly been quite the surprising little device considering its price point. Now let's see if the Thrustmaster TFlight HOTAS X can make up for its poor performance in the hover here in the quick stop.
Okay, so just right off the bat, forward flight, not great. I'm just trying to take off and start the forward flight, and this thing is fighting me so freaking much. Okay, I think we're stable. Okay, we're good. Okay. Oh man, not gonna lie, even after getting stable, this thing is just not performing great. Like, I think I can feel the input shifting in between, well, not pixels, but like resolution amounts. I can feel it bumping over to the next input level. It is rough, man. This feels like flying through sand or something. I don't know how to explain it. It does not feel great. But let's see how it does in the quick stop. We're about to approach it. And quick stop. Hell yeah. There we go. We could have done a little bit better on our collective management, but overall, not bad.
So while the T-Flight performed well in the quick stop, the forward flight was a complete rodeo. I could feel the input values shifting from one XY coordinate to the next. It was seriously that bad. And I was beginning to wonder why anyone would ever recommend the Thrustmaster T-Flight HOTAS X. But there's another far better and more expensive Thrustmaster T16000M to test next.
Okay, so the T16000M seems to be performing okay in the forward flight test. I mean, I still don't like how tense the springs are, and if you notice, I'm not at full throw forward. Oh god. To be clear, that wasn't an issue with the controls. That was me looking down at my hands instead of where I was going, and then ultimately crashing. But anyways, so if you notice, even though I'm not at full forward cyclic, there's a point where if I want to hold that position, it's actually kind of surprisingly easy to tilt the stick off the base. Like right now, the stick is going off the off my desk, even though I'm not fully forward on the stick. So if that's not a sign of the springs just being too tense, I don't know what is. But at least the sensors aren't bad. One thing I am also noticing is there's kind of a bit of stiction being developed in the throttle, so I might have to look into that. That could be a problem for future tests. Alright, we're approaching the quick stop point, so we'll go ahead and brake in 3, 2, 1, brake. Oh, that was good. I don't know if I'm just getting better at it, or it's the HOTAS that's making it better, but I'm pretty sure it's the former. Just getting in more repetitions, but that felt really good.
Just like before during the hover, the tension in the springs were causing me some problems, which were especially noticeable when the base of the stick lifted up off the desk. I wasn't even at 100% full forward stick, I was at best 50% forward. So either the springs need to be loosened or the base needs to be heavier. Something needs to change. But not only that, in addition to this, I was also starting to notice stiction in the throttle developing. And with that, we've completed our helicopter testing. It's time to move on to the ultimate precision flying test, air-to-air refueling. This is where many DCS players fail, but maybe, just maybe, their devices are to blame. So let's find out, starting with the Logitech G Extreme 3D Pro.
Alright, so we're just waiting our turn to get on the tanker. This is an F-16 air-to-air refueling mission that comes with the module. It's available under Instant Action. So if you guys have the F-16 and you want to do this, that's where you can find it. If you notice, we're actually controlling our view using the trim hat on the joystick. So I have zoom out and zoom in bound on these two buttons on the right. And then of course I have up, down, left, and right bound to the trim hat. Alright, that F-16 is done. It's now our turn. We'll just wait for him to get out of the way, then we'll contact the tanker.
Marco, 1-1, Colt.
And let's open our fuel port.
Colt 1-1, ready, pre-contact.
Whoops, not what I meant to do.
Cleared contact.
But it worked out. So you guys know, our goal is to make both those lights that are on the underside of the tanker be in the middle green portion. The left set of lights is my distance vertically from the belly of the tanker, and the lights on the right is my position longitudinally, so forward and aft of the tanker.
Contact.
There we go, that's where we want to be. Let's see if we can hold it there.
You're taking fuel.
For the actual refueling parts, I'm going to go ahead and fast forward these because this clearly shows when I'm drifting out of place and how often I'm forced to make corrections, or even worse, end up making overcorrections.
Transfer complete.
Nice.
Disconnect.
And just like that, air-to-air refueling is a success.
And once again, the Logitech G Extreme 3D Pro is really surprising me in the precision department. It's kind of crazy. But unfortunately, we are now moving on to the TFlight HOTAS X, and I think we know where this is going.
Okay, so I have a feeling this is going to be a terrible experience. Jesus, this dead zone, man, it is way too large. Like, look at this. Look at how much I'm wiggling the stick and there's no response in-game because that's how big the dead zone is. In theory, the throttle control shouldn't be too bad with this HOTAS because we actually have a good amount of resolution in the throttle, at least enough resolution in the throttle. I'm tempted to look down at it to see how true that really is. Actually, you know what? Let's take a look at that really quick. Oh, that looks so grainy. Look at it jump. Oh my god. Especially when you change directions. Ew. Oh man. Come on. Dead zone, work with me. Okay, just need to get a little closer. A little closer. Please, just nose over. Just nose over. Oh no, it's banking to the left. No!
Contact.
There it is. Let's back up, back up, back up.
Fuel.
This is not a fun experience, but we're still making it work.
Although I'm managing to refuel, note just how much I'm drifting around. This was just a complete chore to do, and it's all because of the built-in dead zone.
Please, just top off already. Oh, thank God.
Disconnect.
That was rough, man. That was the most stressful experience ever.
After all of my experiences so far with the HOTAS X, I still did not know why people would recommend it. So I decided to do some research and picked up Thrustmaster's newer TFlight HOTAS 4.
Alright, so because of how bad the HOTAS X felt, I decided to do a little bit of investigation and try to determine why. Why would people recommend the TFlight HOTAS when it was responding so badly? And well, turns out it's because they don't recommend the HOTAS X. They recommend what we see here. This is the TFlight HOTAS 4, as in for the PS4, whereas the HOTAS X is for, you guessed it, not the Xbox, because that wouldn't make sense. It's for the PS3. So apparently Thrustmaster has made quite a few upgrades, in particular to the different sensors that are available in this device, and just right off the bat, the dead zone is way better. Like, there's still a bit of wiggle room, but it's not nearly as large as the HOTAS X.
Contact. You're taking fuel.
Now, I know it's a little hard to tell visually, but the HOTAS 4 on the right felt way better than the HOTAS X on the left, and this in large part has to do with the tighter dead zone.
Wow, that was that was like 9-day difference, man.
Again, I know it was hard to see, but the HOTAS 4 felt way better. Now, did it feel $15 better? Absolutely. But now the real question is, does Thrustmaster's T16000M feel $100 better?
So while I've been complaining about the stiffness of the springs in the T16000M, this scenario is where it would actually be a pretty big benefit, because you're able to make very subtle and precise movements with the stick thanks to the stronger recentering springs. Now, one thing I did mention earlier is I'm starting to feel a bit of stiction in the throttle, and I don't know if you guys can tell. If I were to just push on the throttle just with the tip of my finger like this, you'll notice that it just jumps. So while the stick is great for precision, the throttle, I mean, it wasn't always this way. Like, out of the box it was fine, but after having used this for about, what, 1.5 to 2 weeks now, this thing is not doing great. But let's see if that'll keep us from being able to refuel.
Contact.
In theory, this should be the best performing device out of all of them.
Now, I will say the T16000M did feel fantastic for air-to-air refueling, but this was only compared to the HOTAS X, and against the Logitech G Extreme 3D Pro, it was only marginally better, in my opinion.
Transfer complete. Disconnect.
And just like that, it definitely was the best performer for air-to-air refueling, but not by a lot, at least not compared to the Extreme 3D Pro. I guess where this is really going to shine is probably in the HOTAS test with the A10.
And with that, we will move on to our third major test, the HOTAS test in the A-10C Warthog. This test is meant to check each device's button layout and see just how efficiently they can ripple off ×6 Mavericks using HOTAS commands alone. We'll also be doing this test a little differently in that, instead of showing their results one by one, we'll actually put them head to head with one another to see which device is able to finish this task the fastest. Now, to keep things at a fair starting point, I've synchronized each clip based on their first Maverick launch. The first device to fire their 6th Maverick will be the winner, and they get bonus points if they can beat out my Xbox controller. And our winner, and still the very surprising underdog, the Logitech G Extreme 3D Pro. I think the biggest contributing factor is the logical layout of the buttons on the Logitech. They just made more sense in my brain, but of course that won't necessarily apply to you, so take these results with a grain of salt. But at the very least, I hope this proves there's enough buttons for even the most complex tasks in DCS, albeit with 2 modifiers set up. And with that, we finally get to our final test, a dogfight against the SU-27 Ace AI using the A-18C Hornet. Unlike the previous Axis Precision and Button Efficiency tests, this dogfight is a test of its viability in a fast-paced environment. There are a lot of things happening during a dogfight, and this test will see if it can keep up.
Alright, and here we are back with the Logitech G Extreme 3D Pro, and if you notice, I'm still controlling the camera with the trim hat as well as the zoom in, zoom out with these 2 buttons on the side. And I know a lot of people, especially veterans in DCS, will have a negative opinion on this, probably. And that's because a lot of them would recommend not just getting the device, but also get some form of head tracking. Now, the problem I have with that is you're no longer telling them to buy just this device alone. You're also saying, well, if you need a flight stick, you also need at least a webcam so you can do free face tracking, even though the webcam itself is an additional expense. So what I want to showcase here is what is possible with the device alone, because if you're telling someone you could get into DCS for the cheap, and then you start tacking on things like face tracking and rudder pedals, God forbid, VR, well then it's not just this singular device anymore. What you're really telling them is get a full flight sim setup at that point. And that's honestly not what people are looking for if they're looking just to try DCS. So I'm here to show you guys what is possible with just the singular device. Okay, looks like we're getting in pretty good behind him at the moment. Getting a lot of winning cues here. We just need to make sure we don't overshoot. We've got our gun selected, and If you notice, I'm not taking the shot as he crosses my nose because I want to get in solidly behind him before I pull the trigger.
Altitude.
There's our gun track, and this looks like a good opportunity to get in the guns kill. Now, if you notice, there is wake turbulence enabled, and that is a very dangerous thing because if you start pulling Gs or rotating too much and then you experience wake turbulence, you can potentially snap your wings. Speaking from experience here.
Altitude. Altitude.
So you need to be very careful as you decide to roll in on this guy's 6 to maintain him on your lift vector. This is looking pretty good. Oh, that was very close.
Roll left, roll left.
Oh, please.
Flight controlled. Flight controlled.
We almost overshot him, but that's fine. We almost slammed into the water, that's not fine. And there we go, gun skill. And there you have it. That's what you can do with just this device alone.
And just like before, the Logitech G Extreme 3D Pro continues to impress all the way to the end. Now, I'll save my final thoughts for the end of the video, but my goodness, this thing has an incredible price to performance ratio. Now, next up is the Thrustmaster TFlight HOTAS X.
And we're in the merge.
Flight controlled. Flight controlled.
Now what you'll notice is that I am not currently using the HOTAS 4, I'm actually using the HOTAS X. Oh, Jesus. And that's because
Flight controlled.
while the HOTAS 4 does have better sensors, you really don't need all that precise of sensors in order to do a dogfight. Like, it doesn't require as much precision as, say, air-to-air refueling in order to get a guns kill on an enemy aircraft. So if I can do this with the HOTAS X, then I could definitely do it with the HOTAS 4. Also, another thing I do actually like about the HOTAS X over the Logitech G Extreme 3D Pro is I have the zoom axis bound on this front rocker here on the throttle. So it's actually pretty easy for me to just zoom in by holding a modifier down and then pushing right on the rocker, and then letting go of the modifier and just kind of stays there. Of course, as I demonstrated that, I lost visual of them just because I was trying to demonstrate that. Alright, this is not a good position. Let's slow it down. We're going a bit too fast. There he is. He is pretty much on our 6, but we'll go ahead and dump our nose. Gain a little bit of speed back as we do it. Hopefully he doesn't commit too hard on us while we do this. Looks like he's not. In fact, he may have lost visual. Oh, and he reacquired us. That's okay. We're now at 400 knots, so we have plenty of energy to do something with it.
Flight controlled. Flight controlled.
And we're back on a 6. Let's not dump too much more energy than we have already. There we go, we're zoomed in. Now let's see if we can put the pipper on him. Oh, and did he lose sight of us again? Oh, never mind, and there he goes. Well, we won't miss this opportunity. And maybe we will. Oh, there we go. And splash SU-27.
Overall, the TFlight HOTAS X did just fine in the dogfight. Plus, since I can bind zoom on that extra rocker axis instead of on 2 buttons for zooming in and zooming out individually, that gives me 2 extra binds for anything else. Button real estate is very valuable in DCS, which brings us to the king of button real estate, the Thrustmaster T16000M FCS HOTAS.
And we're in the merge.
Flight controlled. Flight controlled.
Now, where the HOTAS X had the extra single axis, the T16000M has way more. Not only does it have an extra rocker axis on the front of the throttle, even has a rotary axis on the side of the throttle, which is what I'm using here for zooming in and out. And it even has a similar slider axis here on the back of the stick, kind of similar to the Logitech G Extreme 3D Pro. But in addition to those extra axes, it has way more buttons. Like, way more buttons. So honestly, dogfighting should be a piece of cake for this thing. Like, the issue should not be lack of inputs. Alright, we are getting some serious winning cues here, but we are kind of turning on the inside of his circle. So we're going to relax the stick and build some of our energy back. We'll let him get out ahead of us quite a bit for the sake of gaining energy back. Oh, he's dumping the nose, so will we. Now we're at a solid 350 knots, so let's cash that in.
Flight controlled.
And he realizes it, he's starting to turn. And this should be a pretty easy peasy gun skill. And good kill. That was nice, quick, and easy.
And unsurprisingly, the Thrustmaster T16000M FCS HOTAS did very well in this dogfight, and was probably the easiest time I've had against the Ace AI SU-27. Now, with all these tests finally complete, what are my final thoughts and what would I recommend for DCS players looking to purchase their first real flight sim device? In fourth place, and I'm not even sure if I should recommend this to begin with, is Thrustmaster's T-Flight HOTAS X for $65 US. So while this HOTAS does perform all the basic functionality for flying an aircraft in DCS, so you have pitch, you have roll, you have yaw, you also have throttle, and you even get this additional rocker axis that I use for zoom. So while you do get a lot of functionality out of this device, it just doesn't do it all well. So for precise tasks like air-to-air refueling or flying a helicopter, you're going to find yourself at a severe disadvantage just thanks to the poor quality sensors in the stick, as well as the massive unconfigurable dead zone. But if you're new to DCS and all you want is to feel like you're holding a proper stick and throttle, then yeah, this would actually serve you pretty well. Just keep in mind, if you want to take your gameplay to the next level, then maybe spending even $65 US isn't quite worth it for this HOTAS X. Instead, what I would recommend is bumping it up by another $15 to the $80 US Thrustmaster TFlight HOTAS 4. And while this is effectively the HOTAS X because it has the exact same design when it comes to the physical layout, the biggest upgrade here for those extra $15 is in the sensors. With the upgraded sensors, you get way better precision in the pitch and roll axes, and you also get a much smaller dead zone, and that is the biggest contributing factor for why I would absolutely recommend this over the HOTAS X. So honestly, not a bad option, and this comes in third place on my list. And now coming in at the number 2 spot, and probably at the dismay of a lot of people who generally recommend this device, is the Thrustmaster T16000M HOTAS. Now, why is that? Well, that's because in this comparison video, what I'm actually comparing is the performance to cost ratio. And while this device does perform the best out of all 4 devices, it does so at a much steeper cost. Now, I will say there is some key issues that I have with it, in that one, I think the tension in the stick is just too great, but maybe that's just a personal preference and most people would actually prefer the stronger tension in the joystick. But one thing I think is more objective is the stiction in the throttle. And while it is still usable, as you saw, for air-to-air refueling, in about a year's time, that story will change. And I have the perfect example of that. And this is a TWCS throttle that has been well used for over a year by one of my buddies who's graciously offered to let me use it for this comparison. And well, the stiction on this throttle is incredibly bad, so just watch this. Oh my god, I can't even slide the throttle without moving the whole. As you can see, the stiction can get very bad, but overall, this is a very solid device because you get a lot of buttons, a lot of axes, and the quality of those buttons and axes are actually very high. However, there is an issue with stiction in the throttle. So because of that, this does get second place in my book. And in first place with the best cost versus performance ratio, the Logitech G Extreme 3D Pro. This device has been the most surprising underdog performance I have ever experienced. And that's coming from someone who has owned quite a number of devices over the years, everything from an X52 Pro to a Thrustmaster Warthog, and then today to a whole lineup of Virpil gear. This has been the most surprising flight stick I have ever used. Now, that being said, this device does use potentiometers as opposed to Hall effects for its sensors, meaning its shelf life isn't going to be great because over the years you're going to find that the stick will want to drift and you'll have to introduce a bigger and bigger dead zone to account for that drift. But hopefully by then you'll already be looking into upgrading from the stick anyways. Now that said, do any of these devices beat the trusty Xbox controller? Well, if your goal is to feel like you're holding an actual stick or throttle, then obviously this controller is not going to be able to give you that experience. But when it comes to pure functionality, I do still personally think that a standard Xbox controller will give you a lot more for a lot less, especially if you already own one. Now that being said, that is just my opinion, so let me know what you think in the comments below, and let me know what you think about this review. Now, if you're looking to upgrade from, say, your standard Xbox controller and you want to use just another gamepad as opposed to a full flight sim device, feel free to check out my review of the FlyDigi Vader 3 Pro found here.